Are Chinese bikes really as bad as people make out? I've ridden some pretty nasty ones in the past, but I wanted to know what they're really like to live with now. Of course, if I borrowed one from a manufacturer, there'd be cries of fix that they'd give me a specially fettled one, which is why I bought this nearly new Zontes ZT350T for £3,995. Brand new, this ZT350T, which is the 17-inch cast wheel model, would cost £4,499 plus £200 on the road charges of number plate, first registration and road tax. So £4,700. There's also a version with 19-inch front, 17-inch rear, tubeless spoked wheels for £300 more, which I'd have preferred. So why this one? I've wanted to do something like this for a long while. Find out whether Chinese bikes deserve the bad rep they sometimes get. Now, obviously, we can't judge all Chinese bikes by one brand, but I was looking for something from Benelli, Lexmoto, Vogue, or Zontes. I didn't include CF Moto as the prices are getting fairly high, and honestly, with the KTM links, it feels like a brand that's being set up for bigger things. Now, I wanted to spend as little as possible, of course, but I couldn't get anything used really, because if it turned out to be a lemon, how would we be sure it wasn't down to the previous owner's neglect? But this was an ex-demo before being sold fairly locally by a Zontes dealer. And while it was listed as having 10 miles on it, it turned out it only had 4. So buying this one means if it's a load of trouble, Zontes can't wriggle out of it. And if it's great, nobody can assume it's been specially cared for to look better than it really is. So I've done over 700 miles on this in the past 4 weeks, and it's had its first service and some warranty work already. But I didn't dare put anything out about it, as I wanted to make sure that I'd not get any special treatment. I haven't even revealed it on our Bike Social Facebook group, but if you join me and the team there, you'll be able to get the latest updates from now on. Right, let's look at buying it, and to keep you watching, I'm going to break each section up with a quote from the amazing Chinglish instruction manual. Let me know your favourites in the comments. Now, I'm not showing any faces here as I didn't get permission, but this isn't about the dealer. I made a jacket with a hidden camera so I could show you that I really did buy this. It's a nice little independent dealer and workshop that's an official Zontes outlet, but they also had some pretty decent used bikes, including a G310 GS. I went in all innocent and didn't let on that I knew what I was looking at, but I was impressed with the spec of the Zontes.
What, it's electric screen?
Yeah.
Bloody hell.
I tried haggling, but the guy was going nowhere, even when I asked if I could get a luggage rack thrown in for it. I'm pretty crap at bartering anyway, but even though I was using the budget from Bike Social to pay for this, not my own personal money, everything inside me was screaming, no, don't buy this, buy the used G310. But I bought it.
Is there anything you can do on the price? Just
honestly, it's down to the bone, because we have to have a demo on.
Yeah.
Get a little bit of discount, but
yeah, of course.
Follow the rest.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, so it is absolutely weird.
Yeah. All right, no, I'll have that. Yeah. Yeah. Well, can I pay?
All I need is a deposit, or you can pay for it. It's up to you. Like
yeah.
So when I picked it up, I did joke that I should have asked for the first service to be done as part of the deal, but no joy. Still, he had put a tenner's worth of fuel in it. Now, we'll be covering servicing fully in a future video, but it has been done on this one, and I actually used a Zontes place nearer me just because it was more convenient, and also to check how the whole dealer network works. And that cost £121.51, which included changing the rear brake fluid, as apparently it was contaminated water, something that dealer said that isn't that uncommon. Now, this actually needs servicing every 3,000 miles, so that's going to add up this year, but again, that's for a future video. Make sure you hit subscribe to catch all the videos I'll be doing about this, because there's a lot to come, including long distance commuting, weekend blast, dyno, pillion and pinion, touring, and more. So, with the £52 road tax and the service, this Zontes has cost me a total of £4,168.51 so far. Yeah, it's already needed some warranty work. With no obvious pattern, the engine warning light would come on, though it didn't affect the performance at all. Didn't cut out or anything like that. It's actually the EFI light, electronic fuel injection, according to instructions, but it disappeared during my ride the first time it happened. Turns out that was because I was stopping at my mate. Anyway, it did happen again and again. Now the instructions do help a bit here, and though it'd be easier if the code was just displayed on the dash, you can work out what's wrong. Hold the throttle wide open and turn the ignition on, and the EFI light flashes a code. This one was 10. Then 9, then 8. And in the book, that's dump sensor signal voltage is too low. According to the instructions, dumping of sensor when the motorcycle is overturned will cut the power and stop the oil supply. It was similar stuff on Google, so the gist is, it's a tilt sensor. Now I'm pretty sure they mean fuel supply, as the oil pump's going to be mechanical in any case, so not something you can just turn off. And surely Zontes hasn't designed it to seize the engine through oil starvation if you take a tumble. Now as I said, the reason the light disappeared is that after 4 stops, then runs over 4,000 RPM, the light goes out, though the code is stored. And if it comes up again, it flags up again and then needs to go through that reset cycle or hide cycle. You can always still call that code up though, so if you're buying a used one, I'd do this throttle check just to see if there are any fault codes lurking inside. Anyway, I mentioned it at the first service and they confirmed it was the dump sensor, then reset it and said to keep an eye on it. Sure enough, it came up again, so I called and asked for it to be fixed under warranty. At this point, nobody knew what I was doing. I'm just an innocent buyer who doesn't know anything about the bike. They said they'd order the part, and within a few days I had a call back and the bike was booked in for the repair work. And that was done yesterday. So I don't know if it's fixed yet. I've only been able to ride it home, but you and I are going to find out. So yeah, on paper, the spec of this thing is really pretty impressive. What you can't see is Bosch ABS and Bosch fuel injection, so nothing cheap and nasty there. But look at the front brake. It's a J1 4-piston radial caliper. Not heard of them? Well, it's a Spanish company started in 1965 with factories in Spain and China, and it's owned by Brembo. You'll find its calipers on CF Moto, Zero, Husqvarna and KTM, and its brake lines and master cylinders are on some Triumphs. Now the brake lines here are braided, though this does seem pretty common on Chinese bikes, and the exhaust is stainless steel. These wheels do appear to be clear coated, so we'll have to see how well they'll last, but the swing arm looks pretty good, very KTM-esque. The rubber's from Chengshin Tyre, or CST. Now I'll be doing much more in-depth riding videos later, so do subscribe, but even in the bad weather we've been having over the last more than 700 miles, they've seemed really good. And that includes 2 hours in Storm Henk when it was properly hammering it down. Greasy roads, nastiness, been impressed. I actually used to use CST tyres on my Supermoto pit bike, and they were considered some of the best to get back then among the guys I was with in those kind of circles. Now these crash bars, they're standard, and so are these handguards. The levers are both adjustable for span, which you don't find a lot of more expensive bikes, although the clutch biting point is right at the end of the travel. Right at the end. I'll have to adjust that later. Now, I could have asked a dealer or workshop to do it, but would someone new to biking have known it was getting tight? And that's my concern with Chinese bikes. They're usually cheap, though the gap is narrowing, so they're often bought by people new to biking and looking to save some money. The trouble is, they might not realise that you do have to do some maintenance, like on the chain, and most bikes can show signs of corrosion if left out in all weathers and not kept clean. Chinese bikes can need a bit of fettling that experienced riders might not think twice about, but if a new rider has a bad experience with something cheap, could it put them off biking altogether? And that's why I bought this, to find out what life's really like with it. And there's a cast luggage rack on the back and decent grab rails, and this seat isn't bad. It's far from the best I've placed my delicate cheeks on, but it's not the worst either. We'll look at long distance comfort later, and I do mean long distance. Okay, the engine's a 348cc water-cooled single with dual overhead cams and a standard 6-speed gearbox, so 1 down, 5 up. Zontes says it makes 39 brake horsepower at 9,500 RPM and 24 pound-foot at 7,500 RPM. We're going to test that. I've already had this at high motorway speeds, and it seems fine, but obviously more of that to come. It's got an O-ring chain, which I'll be interested to see how long lasts, and the suspension is only adjustable for preload, and that's on the rear. The tank under this plastic cover is galvanised, but we'll have a closer look at that in the next video when I strip this thing down. Make sure you don't miss that. It's got keyless ignition, which honestly is handy. And while I've heard the fob batteries only last about 6 months, if they do go flat, you can still start it by holding the fob next to the antenna on the side here. When you turn it on, it beeps once. And when you turn it off with the button, it beeps again and automatically enables the steering lock. Now that can be a pain if you keep it in the garage and want to be able to move it around, as when you turn the bars, it engages. There's no way to turn the bike off without that, unless you walk away about 1.5 meters, then it turns itself off without locking the steering. It also beeps 8 times to warn you the fob's out of range, which is good to remind you about the steering lock, but annoying late at night. And that siren has 10 different patterns to tell you about faults like stuck buttons or a low remote battery. You have to check the reference in the instructions. But what it doesn't do is act as an alarm, which seems like a massive missed opportunity. Anyway, the switchgear is illuminated and it's got an electric screen. It's a good screen too, less buffety for me at 5'10" than some bikes I've ridden recently, costing 3 times as much. It's got LED headlights, but while I don't want to spoil the upcoming video, they're shockingly bad at night. As in shit, I'm going to crash on this unlit back road bad. The tail light seems a bad design too. It's tucked under the luggage rack, so a truck behind me with the driver high up might struggle to see it. Let's have a look at the dash. Yeah, that skull. Anyway, you can choose from 4 different dash layouts, which are pretty good. The fuel economy says it's MPG, but it's clearly showing litres per 100 kilometre. You can't change that. Check this out though, tyre pressure monitors. They show pressure and temperature and warn you if the pressure gets low. Weirdly, the recommended pressures for this are 40 psi front and rear, which explains why I was getting a warning that one was low when I'd set them at 36-42. Now you can also get navigation on this dash. I thought this was Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, but it's not. It's a dedicated app that you have to download, although from the Google Play Store, so it is legit. It won't work with my Google Pixel 7 Pro, but to be fair, this won't work with my CTEK charger either. Despite Android being Google's thing, this phone's been a pain in the ass. It works fine on my wife and daughter's Android phones. But it got to a point where it wanted me to give their Google account details, so I didn't go any further. I'll try it out properly for the next video with a safe account, just to be sure. The fuel filler cover is electrically released, which is kind of cool, but you still have to unscrew the cap inside. What bothers me more though is to open it, you have to have the ignition turned on, which I don't really like. I suppose it's still got the fuel cap on the top, but once you've got this open, you should then turn it off, but then you have the steering lock comes on. So if you push the bike away after filling, if you turn the bars to move it, that'll engage. The seat's electrically released too. Now, when I bought the bike, the guy said a few times to keep it charged up, which I thought was a bit odd. And he had put a fly lead on it, which he left on there. Now, I've actually replaced it with a CTEK one, but his was a SAE type, dangling underneath, so it would catch all the crap from the wheel. It's lucky he had though, because within 5 days, I went to the bike and the battery was flat. But to get to the battery to charge it, I would have needed to open the seat. So you can see the problem here, yeah? Anyway, his fly lead let me charge it, and I think it was because the bike had been sat in the showroom for several months. The battery probably become self-fated, and that's why it died so quick. So since then, using a charger that does desulfate a battery, it's held a charge fine, and it doesn't look like there's any really excessive power drain on this. I tend to keep my bikes on a maintenance charger, but I've left this one off deliberately, and it does seem to be fine now. Now the bike does come with this cheap charger, which plugs in under here. So I could probably have still got the seat off if that fly lead hadn't have been there. But I'd prefer a manual release to this seat, and that's what you get. So I'd have to put an adapter on it, but that plug should go in. It's, I suppose, better than nothing. The battery's pretty big, and a 10 amp hour capacity is fairly large for a smaller bike like this. Zontes says on its website that this has a high power magneto, and riders can connect auxiliary accessories with confidence. Having said that, the instructions say that it is forbidden to use GPS, spotlights and other electrical equipment to directly take power on the positive and negative poles of the battery. So I'm guessing that's to prevent them flattening it when the ignition's off. So in the next video, I'll show you how I dealt with that. Now the total load on the battery from external accessories is quoted as being a maximum of 60 watts. And I do guess that includes from the pair of 2 amp USB ports in the fairing, which have to be kept covered, so aren't that much use in the rain. But yeah, that 60 watts at 12 volts means 5 amps maximum. A heated jacket could use all of that. Still, the dash shows the battery voltage and I haven't seen that drop yet, so I'll keep an eye on it after accessories go on. Honestly, assuming this thing lasts well, all that spec is pretty impressive. I just hope the general electronics are more reliable than that dump sensor. Now, I've been holding off adding any accessories to this until the first service and the warranty work was done, but I did coat it in XCP as soon as I got it. I do that with every bike I own, so I don't see why I should treat this any differently. I won't be mollycoddling this or going silly with keeping it spot, as you can see, but I'm glad I did it because look how the salt has been forming on the surface of some of it. Again, that's not corrosion, that's just the salt sitting there, but it shows just how much is out there on the roads. Fortunately, that is all brushing away, and I'm going to give this a wash tonight. As I said, I also added this CTEK charging lead because I'm reviewing one of their chargers at the moment, and I put in a connector for my cries heated vest as it's been freezing recently. The only other thing I did was fit this pair of R&G paddock stand bobbins as there's no centre stand. It's a lot easier to clean the bike and lube the chain this way. I had these kicking about, but they're normally about 25 quid. Right, the next video will show it all stripped down. And while I have all the panels off, I'm going to wire in the set of £49.99 Oxford rear running lights that are on the VFR at the moment, as I'm really worried about being seen by trucks behind me. I've actually got these white front ones too, but I need more output. So instead, I'm going to fit these Oxford auxiliary lights. Now, I've used Denali for many years and they're great, but these are cheaper and the spec sounds like they're brighter than what I have on my GS, so I want to give them a go. 2,300 lumens in total apparently, and they retail at £229.99, but they're easy to find for about 180. Now, Bike Social Facebook group member Mick Handley is going to review these ones for me, so keep an eye out on there. And of course at our website, bikesocial.co.uk, where we have thousands of in-depth, unbiased and honest written reviews of bikes and kit. You'll also find links to our membership site there, which has hundreds of discounts on track days, training, parts, kit and money can't buy experiences like exclusive BSB access. If you buy your motorcycle insurance direct through Bennett's, you get access to all that for free. So all in, not counting the charging lead and the XCP rust protection, I'll have added 255 quid's worth of accessories that I'd say are pretty important to have. Now, Ricky Barkley had asked on our Facebook group about whether the Chi-G AIO 5 is any good. So I'm going to fit one to the Zontes to get some serious miles on it and find out. It does sound like a useful bit of kit with it having Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, as well as front and rear dash cam, so we'll see. I'm also going to fit this Shad SH44 top box, which is £122.99 plus £42.99 for the fitting kit. Now, having somewhere to put shopping, carry a lock or stow my helmet is really important to me, and this box is big enough without being too bulky. It's really nicely made, which shouldn't be a surprise when you learn that Shad makes BMW's luggage. Now, I've used Shad kit before, and Bike Social's Andy Shoebridge has it on his S1000 XR. It's great kit. And of course, I want luggage for when I go away with this, which brings me to my final modification, this. In August, I'll be riding down to Portsmouth, where I'll get a Brittany ferry across to Saint Malo. I'm doing it this way rather than on the Channel Tunnel. It puts me a little further south in France, but more importantly, as the crossing's overnight, it means I'll be fully refreshed and ready to ride at 8:30 in the morning. From there, I'll be taking back roads through France and down to just south of Malaga. I'll have 2 days there to meet my wife and daughter, then I'll ride back up to Santander to get the crossing back to Portsmouth with Brittany ferries again. So all in, it'll be a ride of about 2,500 miles. And I'm putting my trust in this bike, so please hit those like and subscribe buttons to not miss any of it. I also want to mention that we're supporting the Magpas Air Ambulance charity this year and next. Air ambulances aren't just about getting to people in inaccessible places. Magpas is for when a patient doesn't have time to be taken to a hospital or can't be moved without very specialist care. It quite literally takes the hospital to the patient because without it, they might not survive. Magpas is teamed by specialist doctors and critical care paramedics operating 24/7 across 12 counties and has saved or changed the lives of over 60,000 seriously ill or injured people, their families and loved ones since it was formed in 1971. A massive thanks to those who've already generously contributed, and Bennett's will match whatever we raise up to £2,500 each year. So if you'd like to make a small donation, every pound you can give is worth £2 to what is a life-saving charity. I'll put a link in the description. Anyway, the next video is coming sharpish, as once I've edited this, I'm going to start stripping it down. So whatever you're riding and wherever you're going, enjoy the adventure, and I'll see you soon.